show. This is episode 673. I'm joined by my friend Sean Kiernan from the SK Sports Podcast as a special co-host. And we're joined by special guest Jordan Raanan. He's a big-time ESPN reporter from the New York Giants, and he covers all things Giants and one of the best out there, in my opinion. So I just want to say thank you, Jordan, for taking the time to join the show. And how are you and your family doing so far? And I was hoping that 2021 got off to a great start, but we're not, because yesterday we lost the Packers GM, Ted Thompson. RIP to him. And today we just lost Hank Aaron, one of the best hitters in the game. So RIP to them too. So, but how are you and your family doing?
Yeah, thankfully we're okay. We're all healthy over here. That's really what's most important in the big picture. So, you know, we're living in a different world right now. With still the effects of the COVID and coronavirus. So it was definitely a different year. But yeah, RIP to Ted Thompson, Henry Aaron, their families. Obviously, two huge figures. Yeah. Ted Thompson in Green Bay the last decade or two, and Henry Aaron, for decades and decades, is one of the great baseball players of all time.
Yep. So I'm going to let Sean start off here since he's a Giant fan. So
yeah, you needed to bring in reinforcements, I see, huh? That's what had to happen, I guess.
Actually, my co-host Alyssa, she couldn't join because she covers Gonzaga games also. So yeah, she's on the road.
They're good.
So, Jordan, thank you for joining today. Well, before we get into anything Giants or anything like that, I'm actually really interested in your journey, how you got up to this point. Could you talk about, just give us a little about your journey up to this point now?
Yeah, for me personally, of how I got to be the Giants reporter for ESPN. I mean, I started grinding. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out of college. I was a communications major. Maryland, you can kind of see it up there. You can see a half of a piece. Yeah, so I was doing some TV production stuff a little bit here and there. Did a bunch of internships on the TV side, and I was I just know I wanted to be involved in sports. So what I did was I basically grinded my way up. I mean, I held multiple part-time jobs, TV production, writing for a wire service. I then went and worked at a small newspaper as an intern or part-time job. And then that job led to another job at a newspaper where I was more of an editor. And then I worked online. And so, yeah, just keep grinding my way up. I mean, job after job after job, working multiple jobs at the same time, just trying to make it work. Because this is what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be involved in sports. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how, but nowadays, especially, it's more important than ever. And I think I realized this a while back, probably when I was trying to grind up, and it served me well, is that you kind of want experience doing a little bit of everything. Yeah. It's better to be able to do a lot of things nowadays. That's what the job entails. Now, eventually I got a job. NJ.com actually hired me to cover the Eagles. And then a few months into that, they said, we have an opening covering the Giants. We want you to come do that. So I did that. So I was working for NJ.com in the Star Ledger. And then from there, I got the ESPN job. So little by little, step by step. And, each of those steps along the way helped the people that I met along the way, the network that I grew. Yeah. That's essentially what helped me get to the next spot almost every time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah. So speaking of working your way up, so who is that one person that you looked up to growing up in the sports industry as a reporter or journalist? And what advice did you get when you were working your way up?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, and I was actually a huge fan of Mike and the Mad Dog. I mean, that was kind of what I grew up on. That was just sort of my generation of New York fan. That was the big thing. And I just used to say to myself, wow, growing up talking about sports, if that's your job, their job was just to sit there and talk about sports for 5 hours a day. That just seemed, wow, I want to do that, man. That's the way to go. So I always kind of watched and I paid, a lot of attention to them growing up. And then as I started to get into the business, you see people I remember reaching out to Sal Palantonia at one point, and very respected, great reporter for ESPN. And I said, hey, if I want to cover an NFL team, if I want to be a beat reporter, what suggestions do you have? And, he gave me all these ideas. I mean, Peter King was another one. And I believe when I was doing that, I spoke to Peter King too at one point. And I say, give me some tips. And, I'll tell you one thing he told me that I remember to this day. It was like, every day you should be making 5 phone calls to people, to just learn more information, to, just continue keep those relationships alive. Like every day you should be making 5 phone calls. And then you try and do that. Nowadays it might be text, it might be as part of that. But yeah, that was great advice to say, wow, that's actually a really good idea. Sal Paolantonio also, I don't know if he still does it, but I believe, and he told me this or I read it, he used to send thank you notes. I think he still does it to every single person that he interviews.
Wow.
Like he sends an actual thank you note and made sure that they received it. Mostly he used to do it by hand. I don't know if that's feasible these days, but just these little things of say, oh, wow, okay. Now you see why he has the respect of players, why they're willing to talk to him. Like these things matter. All these little things. And there was a guy also I worked with in Philadelphia. His name is Reuben Frank, who when I was really young, and there's a lot of intricacies of how this business works and like how you maintain relationships, how you work sources, how you build sources. And Reuben Frank, when I was in Philadelphia, he's still there working covering the Eagles. He kind of helped guide me through that when I really had no idea what the heck I was doing.
Jordan, you mentioned building relationships like on your way up. How important is that, like, for a career moving forward? Like, not just like with players, but just with like your coworkers as well. How big is that?
Yeah, I mean that's huge. I mean I always say this, and this holds true at every level, is that it's a relationship business, right? I mean that's literally what it is. Like in order to get information, the only way to do it is to have relationships. So the only way you're going to be successful in this business is if you're able to juggle, handle, develop, and maintain relationships. Like it's really that simple. I mean, some people are really good at it. Some people can go and then crush some guy and like be extremely critical, and then that guy can get mad, but then they can like reel him back in and like massage that relationship. There's a skill to it for sure. Like, you're gonna have to be critical of guys sometimes. There's going to be guys that are mad at you. There are going to be guys that don't like you. It's just the way it is. And the way I go about it is I try and be myself. I mean, and I think naturally the people that are closest to me, like-minded, are the people that I end up attracting to. Right. So those are the people that I'm able to build my network in. And it's been monumental along the way of like, that's how, I've had, I can only speak for me personally on this, but that's how I've had success. But like you said, building those relationships with, players, coaches, editors, other writers. I mean, Mike Garafolo, who works for the NFL Network, was huge to my career as well. I mean, he helped me get that job covering the Giants the first time because it was an editor he had worked for, and I was friendly with him. So him putting in that word for me was huge at the time.
So speaking of, obviously this industry is all about being persistent and staying on top. But for you, I'm just curious. Obviously, you had multiple jobs, but outside of those jobs, how persistent were you when it came to the interviews? When you started doing interviews, how persistent were you when you were getting into this field?
Oh, I was very persistent. I mean, I used to send resumes, and I was shooting way out of my league in retrospect on some of these jobs that I applied for and talked to people about. I used to keep a list in my drawer. I mean, I guess I could be spiteful. I used to keep a list of all the places that were denying me, and it started to get too long. That eventually I was like, all right, this is probably not going to be productive anymore. But yeah, I mean, you just have to keep grinding, going at it. And you have to realize that you're applying for jobs in this industry most of the time where one person's getting hired and thousands of people are applying for a job. So, I mean, that's not good odds. And that's why if you don't have that or that person that can put in that good word for you, it's going to make life very difficult. I mean, it makes it really, really difficult for you to get noticed. Now, you have a little more bigger advantage these days is that you can create your own content. That used to not necessarily be as much the case. You can create your own content. You can create your own reel. So you have these at your disposal. You can get people if you can get your stuff in front of people's eyes a little bit easier and it's a little bit more accessible. But yeah, you're going to have to grind and keep going and learn how to deal with rejection, because this business, you're competing against a lot of people. And to me, the idea is to differentiate yourself from everyone else. How can I differentiate myself from everybody else?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you bring up a really good point there. And like, I feel like all you got to do, just like what you said earlier, just be yourself. And that's all you can do. And you said that Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network helped you out with the Giants job. So what does that mean to you to cover a great organization like the New York Giants?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a good deal. I mean, when they said, hey, I was hired originally to do some Eagles coverage. They were starting up at NJ.com and said, hey, we're a New Jersey paper. Half New Jersey really is technically Eagles fans, which is kind of true. South Jersey is basically Philadelphia. So, but when they said, hey, you want to come cover the Giants, I was like, it's a better job. It's more money. It was full-time, which the other one at the time was contract-based. So it was that to me was the biggest difference, obviously. The reality is, once you start being a reporter and covering a team, the fandom part of it altogether kind of disappears. Right. It never completely maybe disappears, but your job is to be unbiased. Your job is to look at things from a different angle, like the pros and cons of everything. Like you're viewing it different now. To cover the Giants, the thing to me that attracted me, this is a top organization. Eyeballs are on the Giants. People are paying attention. It's the New York market. So to me, those were the things that really stood out the most. Now, also, I came in, it was ironic. I came in middle of 2013. So at that point, you're still talking about, they're basically 2 years removed from the Super Bowl, right? So a year and a half, really. Now, they had started off really poorly that year. I believe they were 0-6, 0-5, 0-6, whatever it was in 2013. But I thought I was coming to cover a team that was, they had won a lot. They had just won 2 Super Bowls in 2013, 2 Super Bowls in the last 6 years. It turns out that hasn't necessarily been the case. They've been bad for the most part since I've gotten there. They've had 1 winning season. But you know what? They're still the Giants. It's still a prominent organization, which to me makes it a prime job, a coveted job for sure. Now, I think every job covering an NFL team is a great job and coveted. But there's certain markets are bigger than others, and the New York market obviously is up there. I mean, when you list like the teams that you probably get the most attention and attraction, the Giants, they're not number one. The Cowboys are number one in regards to attention and eyeballs and focus. But the Giants they're in that top 10, even though they've struggled a lot in recent years. Like, they're still in that top 10. And we're talking about a team that now, 2013 to 2020, 6, 7 of 8 seasons, has had a losing record, and they're still one of the more prominent teams in the league. So that tells you a lot about where they are as an organization. That's what happens when you win 4 Super Bowls. I mean, they have 4 Super Bowls since 86. So
yeah,
that's there's not many teams that can say that, organizations.
So obviously now this we're living in a unique situation in the NFL, and obviously we're in playoff mode. But during the season, obviously it was a different feel with no fans at first. So for you as a reporter, how weird was it seeing not to see fans in the stadium, especially in football games? And how different was the coverage for you guys though, covering it from home instead of in the stadium?
Yeah, the whole thing is just kind of bizarro world. To actually have no fans in the seats for games is really strange. It's really eerily quiet in there. And I know Joe Judge has said this, and I'm sure gazillion other people out there have said it. Like, everybody likes the fans, and that includes the media too. I mean, it creates an atmosphere. There's an atmosphere. There's excitement. Like when you go to the Giants played in Dallas every year in like the opener, almost every year for the last 7 or 8 years. Like most of the time, they've been in that situation where they play an opener in Dallas, and you walk in that stadium every year, and that's a huge stadium. It's like a party-like atmosphere. You just feel the environment. It's an awesome atmosphere there, and like that's the kind of stuff you're just missing. And so, yeah, once the game starts and you're in the game, maybe you don't notice it as much, but just football is a lot about the fan. I mean, the fans drive the business. The tailgating, the parking lots, the ups and downs in the stadium, the atmosphere in the stadium. That was really lacking this year. As for being a reporter, it was a totally different world. You didn't get to step foot in. We didn't step foot in the building, the Giants facility, once this year. Wow. We were outside at practice but you're far away, you're distance. So the personal interaction is not there. And like I said before, there's a relationship business. And so you're obviously at a disadvantage. You're not able to do a lot of things that you do. You don't just bump into guys and be able to have conversations or talk to someone in the locker room and be able to, just basically shoot the shit, kind of deal. This hasn't been the case. So it's been a different year. I guess, everyone just has to do what they got to do. And we have to work also the same way everyone else does. And, no travel, no going inside the facility, no face-to-face with the players. It's all Zoom like this. I mean, that's the world that I think almost everyone's been living in this last year.
Yeah. And you guys definitely made the best out you can out of the situation for sure. And how do you think personally you did making that transition over to like talking to players, talking to coaches over different platforms like on Zoom and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty critical of myself. So look, you make it work, but I can say this definitively. Like I probably might say this every year, but I don't think I did a great job because you can't get some of the stories maybe you would have got. You can't get some of the information that maybe you would have got. Now, I have no one, I guess, to blame but myself, but there's just ways I'm a big person who operates by being around and making sure I'm always there. And I'm like the first one there, the last one to leave kind of deal. I feel like stories come to me. I'm not the best. I'm not a great planner. So, I mean, I've tried this year to do, plan ahead and think of stories, but, things change. You never know when you show up what you're going to come up with or what might happen. So, it made it a lot tougher. And I would say I probably didn't do a good enough job to my own liking, at least, of finding unique stories. And maybe I probably needed to dig deeper more. And how? I mean, I guess you have to be innovative with the way you operate these days. So I don't know. Hopefully I don't have to worry about it next year and we can get back to being around and me going back to the fact that by being there, I could come up with story ideas and sort of stumble onto stories is like how I like to describe it, where I don't think that's necessarily accurate, but I guess I'll go with it anyway.
Yeah. So I'm just curious. So I'm sure Sean is going to ask you about the Giants too, but I'm just curious, when the Giants hired Joe Judge, what was your initial reaction then, and seeing him now go up as a head coach and making this team competitive? And they almost made the playoffs, but they competed every game they competed. Joe Judge threw everything at them. So what was your initial reaction when they hired him and now?
My initial reaction was surprise. I mean, I didn't know a ton about Joe Judge. I knew he was on the verge of taking the Mississippi State job. This was his one interview in the NFL. And, like, let's be honest, he was the Patriots special teams coordinator, but, like, maybe I would have recognized his face, but I barely even knew his name until a few weeks before, like, this process started. So I was definitely surprised, but learning about him and getting to know him, I would say pleasantly surprised. I mean, you could see why the Giants really liked him. He has that. I mean, his attention to detail is top notch, and I think you saw that. You mentioned this year. That's part of why I think you can be pleased with what you've seen from him in the Giants his first year. The attention to detail is dynamite. His ability to be hard on guys, but at the same time be human. Like, a lot of these Bill Belichick proteges have been like robots, and like they try and be Bill Belichick, and they try and, give nothing and just do it my way. This is the way we need to do it. And, like, yeah, that's great. That's fine and dandy when you're Bill Belichick and you're walking around and you have, like, 2 hands full of rings from your career. And you're like, of course I'm going to do what Bill Belichick says, but are you really going to just do whatever Eric Mangini tells you, or whatever Bill O'Brien tells you, or whatever Joe Judge tells you? No, it doesn't really work that way. So you have to have a human element to yourself where you can explain to people, where you can explain to players why they're doing it, not just because you told them. Like, that doesn't work for everyone. Yeah, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban can pull it off, okay? Joe Judge is not comparable to Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, okay, in terms of accomplishments to date. So, but he has proven, and I've seen it firsthand, and just from talking to him, you can tell he has that ability to, MF some guys, and, he has a very high, curse word per sentence ratio, really high. But, to then curse out guys and yell at them, but then at the same time go and then later put his arm around them and, reel them in and make them feel like, he's doing it because he cares, not just because he's doing it because he told you to and he wants to win. So I think, to me, that's the biggest thing. And Joe Judge's biggest thing year one, and he told me this from day one, was, he knew that the wins and losses would be tough, that this team still wasn't quite there talent-wise, and they're still not. And that's reality. Everybody there knows it. But establish that culture and build the foundation and have players buy in, bring in the type of players that they want to do that. And I think you've seen that. I think that's why people are kind of pleased, even though, look, 6 wins is nothing to write home about in the NFL, but you can still look at it and say, look, they've made progress. They're moving in the right direction. You could feel good. I say that, loosely, about winning 6 games because of those reasons. So I wouldn't feel great about it. I mean, they still only won 6 wins and are obviously pretty far away from being a real contender, but you feel like they're at least moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. They definitely are. And with the 6 wins, when you look at, like, a good portion of their losses this past season, I mean, they were close. Like, they got blown out a couple, I think it was Arizona, the Niners, and the Steelers only won by 10, so that wasn't even a blowout, really.
It was. So, I don't know. I don't know. That narrative I'm not so into. I mean, they got blown out by San Francisco. They got dominated by Arizona. They end up getting dominated by the Ravens. That wasn't a game. And then the Browns as well. So you're talking like 4 out of 16 games. They pretty much weren't even in those games. Yeah, for a while it held true, but at the end of the season when they started playing the good teams again, you kind of got a dose of reality. To me, that just shows you more of where they are as an organization. They're good enough to be competitive. They're not good enough at this point in their current composition to really compete with, and I'm not even going to say the top teams, because Arizona and Cleveland were sort of fringe playoff teams. They were like the bottom end, and Arizona didn't even make it. So, but they're not at the level of playoff contenders yet, I should say. They're still in that, okay, we're like we're close to an average team, in their development, which, look, they made mistakes in the past. You gotta pay for them. They're still paying for them, and they don't have the roster And now this is what the third straight coach is. You can't just blame it on the coach. There's been a talent deficiency over the past 4, 5, 6 years, severe.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to the NFC least, I gotta ask you about the coaching carousel that's going on right now. We got one more job open, and I'm still surprised that Eric Beverly has not gotten any job. He deserves something. But what are your thoughts on all this coaching carousel? And I love what the Jets did with Robert Saleh. I think obviously some people don't know about him here in the East Coast, but whoever watched him in the West Coast, they know a lot about him. He reminds me of the Joe Judge hiring. So it's like I think the Jets are moving into a new phase of football. So I feel like Robert Saleh will bring that defensive mentality and the military mindset like what Joe Judge brings for the Giants. So I think I like that hire. But outside of that, what do you like about this coaching carousel?
Yeah, the coaching carousel is always a crazy thing. We sit here and people sit here and say, I want this guy, da-da-da. The reality is we know nothing about who's going to be a good coach and who's not. And you know what the ironic part is? Most of these teams don't seem to know anything about what makes a good coach or a successful or bad head coach. It is just a crazy process, and you never really know what's important for a head coach. Like Robert Saleh, I could see that one working because I think the most important thing, and I've come around to this over the last few years now, is the X's and O's and whether you're a great coordinator. I don't think that obviously we've seen it time and time again. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good coach. How many good coordinators have we seen flop as head coaches? I mean, it happens all the time, over and over. So to me, when I look at it, I say, who is the best leader? And not only with the players, but with their coaching staff can then take and dole out responsibility and oversee the coaching staff. Like that to me, I think is pretty much like the in-game stuff is important. Yes. But how do you even know who's good at the in-game stuff? It's impossible. These guys have never done it, right? Like unless they were a head coach before, they've never done it. So to me, the most important part is who are going to be the best leaders of not only the players, but also the coaching staff, and be able to build. You have to be able to have a good coaching staff with you. That's huge also. So your contacts within and around the league are gigantic. All these things are huge. So I mean, Robert Saleh to me looks like a guy you could just see him being a good leader, being a guy who, because you hear some of his former players talk about him. I mean, and they'll die on the hill for this guy. I mean, that's what you like. And that to me says the guy's probably a really good leader. And he can go in a room of 53 and delegate responsibilities all around the room. Now, it's more than 53 because we're including coaches. But delegate responsibilities and get the most out of guys. So I like that one. I think it has a lot of chance of succeeding. I don't know what the deal is with Eric Bieniemy. I don't know that situation. I'm going to be honest with you. You see the success that they've had in Kansas City and Andy Reid's assistants in the past go around. But, I mean, we're now this is like the third straight year that Eric Bieniemy's done a lot of interviews and he's not getting a job. So, you just sit there and you scratch your head and you're like, what's going on here? Why isn't he getting a job? I just don't know. But we'll see. I mean, the one hire that really intrigues me is the one Philadelphia just made, Nick Sirianni. I mean, I don't know much about him at all, to be honest with you. I know he's been an assistant, but so whether that's successful or not, who knows, right? Because when you look at Philadelphia's past, they hired Andy Reid. He was the quarterback's coach for Green Bay. Never called plays. Turned out to be a great head coach, obviously. Chip Kelly came in with super hype. I was there at the time. He was a total flop and a bust. Yeah. Doug Peterson, most people killed that one. They won a Super Bowl with him. So, yeah, I don't know. It's such a crapshoot, I feel like, with these head coaching hires, and you just never know.
Yeah. What did you think of, that whole situation with, Peterson, the way things ended over there in Philly? Because it feels like that front office and Peterson were just on completely different pages. What did you think about that situation?
yeah, to me, it comes down to one thing. It comes down to Carson Wentz. I mean, he is owed a lot of money. The relationship with Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson was bad. I mean, that's what's been reported. That's what's been out there. So the fact that that's the case, it ended up probably costing Doug Peterson his job because, look, the reality is they just won a Super Bowl how many years ago? 3?
Yeah, 3 years.
Whatever it was, 3 years ago, they won a Super Bowl. Both the GM and the coach probably deserve an opportunity to rebuild it all there. But the problem is they have a lot of money invested in the quarterback, and the quarterback has a bad relationship with the coach. And so what's kind of the only way to salvage it is to say, all right, if we get rid of the coach, we could tell the quarterback, look, we're starting over. Forget last year even happened. Here's a clean slate. It was sort of, to me, the only way that was probably going to play out because they have to. They're financially committed to Carson Wentz. So because of that reason, Doug Peterson ended up with the short end of the stick, and he gets to take a year off, a well-paid year off, I should say. So let's not feel too bad. Doug Peterson's all right.
Yeah,
I think he's gonna be just fine.
I think he'll get another job at some point, which we don't know where, but I think I think he'll get another.
Next year, though. Next year. What's the rush for him to come back now? He's getting paid a lot of money to sit out if he wants. So
let's get into.
He's not in a rush. I think next year he gets another job, and there we go.
I wonder who. It'd be interesting who's going to be open for next year's vacancy, but.
I don't know if that hiccup meant anything right there. I don't know. Was that like an omen that like Doug Peterson's gonna get hired by the Giants or something?
Or the Dallas Cowboys?
They might be looking for a coach next year. You never know.
But let's get into the NFC East, as Andy puts it. But I want to ask you about every team. But what do you like about the future? Obviously, Washington, I love their future because they have a great defense already set up. All they need is a quarterback. We don't know what Alex Smith is where he's going to be at. And obviously, they just hired Jennifer King, the first African-American female to be a full-time coach. I like where we're going with the women in sports. I love that. But what do you like about the futures of Dallas, Philly, and New York?
Yeah, there's a lot to like about Washington, to be honest with you. Now, granted, their biggest hole is the most important one. So how can they fill that? How can you fill the quarterback spot? I mean, Alex Smith is a great story. He's not the long-term answer there. Dwayne Haskins isn't even on their roster anymore. So Taylor Heineke, come on. He was great in the playoff game, good showing, but he's not the future of the Washington football team. So they're in a good spot. They're in they're building a good roster. Their defense it's a quality defense with two really young, dominant edge rushers, that's a great way to build. They got a number one receiver, Terry McLaurin's dynamite. Antonio Gibson looks like he's a good quality running back who's going to be young and cheap for a while. So a lot of good pieces in place, but how do they get that quarterback? That's the big question mark with them. The Giants, their future really, to me, is totally contingent on what is Daniel Jones. Okay, that was the real downside of the Giants this year is we came in saying, all right, let's see a little growth from Daniel Jones. Know he's moving in the right direction, and be confident that he's going to be our franchise quarterback for years and years to come. He has a nice, solid year. He builds on a rookie year that there was enough to be optimistic about, and really. We end the second year, we're kind of still at the same place we were after the first year with Daniel Jones. Like, he could be good maybe, but maybe there's also a decent chance he's just an average quarterback. So, they're moving in the right direction. They have assets. They're building a little bit more talent. You like the coach and the coaching staff, but they're capped on, okay, how good is their quarterback going to be? And if he turns out to not be the real deal, and he's just an average guy, mediocre guy, and always going to turn the ball over a lot and have his ups and downs and not be able to take it to that next level, you're probably going to be screwed, right? That's the worst place to be is with an average quarterback, because then you're sitting there 6, 7, 8 years down the line saying, what do we just do here? And the likelihood is, you didn't go anywhere. So the Giants are very – you're crossing your fingers right now if you're the Giants or the Giants fans saying, we really hope that Daniel Jones is that guy.
Yeah.
Because they were 31st in total offense this year. I mean, if he's that guy and he's that good, you don't want your offense – your offense shouldn't finish in 31st. Now, I'm not giving up hope on him. I still think you see enough where you're like, okay, I'm optimistic. He can be really good. But now this is the year. You got to see it this year.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't see it this season, it's probably not going to happen, right? The 3 years is a pretty good sample size in the NFL.
Yeah.
So this year is kind of going to be make or break for Daniel Jones, and the Giants' future is totally contingent on that. They should get back Saquon, should help them make things better. They'll be able to add a receiver, and God, they need a pass rusher from somewhere. But there's pieces for that to be a really good defense. But this is an offensive league, so they got to fix that offense. Philly, they're in no man's land right now. They got to fix Carson Wentz, and your Cowboys, always a good team. You always look at the roster and you think it's pretty good, but something just doesn't seem to be right there. But having Dak Prescott back will obviously help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was turning into that dominant player, that top-end quarterback. I wasn't always the biggest fan of him, but, I mean, there's no denying the strides that he had made the previous few years. If he could come back and play at that level that he was playing this year, I mean, Dallas has the core to be a really good team. They just need to sort of fix some internal things, it seems like. But you could always be optimistic about the Cowboys, it seems. They've been like that for how many years?
Yeah.
How many years have you been optimistic?
I've been optimistic.
20, your whole life?
Since I've been a Cowboys fan, I've been optimistic.
I mean, yeah, there's always seems to be reason to be optimistic in them, and then they lay down. They lay down.
The problem is Jerry Jones is still the GM. He needs to get off the GM job and give it to Stephen Jones and because I feel like it's messing up the whole front office situation. And I feel like we need better defense. The defense, number one question is the defense. But
for sure,
he needs to focus on being an owner and let Stephen Jones run the team.
Well, the reality is, and I don't disagree with you in the fact that having a general manager who happens to be the owner is just not necessarily a good thing. It's just a bad setup. But the reality is they've actually brought in a lot of talent and done pretty good in the draft over a pretty long period of time now. So it's an interesting situation. I would prefer in general that ownership is not involved in personnel decisions, but you're basically never going to have that in your entire life. So you better just get used to it because that's life as a Dallas Cowboy fan. So you better hope it works at some point because not changing.
Nope.
You mentioned about the Giants getting a wide receiver. That's pretty obvious. What I look for in a receiver now is like a guy, a big, tall receiver who can go up and get the ball for us. What do you think? What are you looking for in a wide receiver for the Giants to pursue?
Yeah, I think, I don't look at it generally that much. Like their composition of their team, yes. You have Sterling Shepard. Golden Tate will probably be gone. I mean, let's be realistic. Money, contract, everything about it doesn't make sense that he's older. So you're talking about you have Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard. Both guys could probably be decent good quality number twos, neither of them real number ones. I don't think you need the big dominant receiver these days. The game is so spread out. It would be nice, like if you say, pick, the perfect receiver. Yeah, the perfect receiver is going to look like Julio Jones and be Julio Jones or some version of that. But if you tell me, we're going to put Steph Diggs in there, I mean, he's not big. I don't care if he's big. He can get open. So as long as you can get open consistently, guys nowadays are able to do it in different ways, whether it's route running, speed, just craftiness. There's different ways to do it in today's game. So I just think they need a number one receiver. I don't think it has to be a big, tall, Plaxico type receiver. It would be nice if that were the option, but I don't think you have to pigeonhole that being the option. But there's a lot of good guys, good players that might hit free agency this year. It's a strong wide receiver draft, so that works out well in the Giants' favor this year for a team that needs a top receiver.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you Amari Cooper for free if you guys want Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper's a good player, man. Why do you want to give away Amari Cooper? I mean, it costs a lot of money. That's the other thing. Do the Giants want to pay a guy or do they want to draft a guy?
I don't know, but I have a couple options for you guys real quick. Waddle is one. I like Waddle. I think Waddle would be a good fit.
Very good.
Jamar Chase, but the hype dream right now. I think you guys, Devontae Smith. If somehow, obviously, I don't think he's going to last that long, but I think the Giants need to go find a way how to get him or Waddle or Jamar Chase. I think those are the 3 top targets in the draft. They should be targeted.
And Devontae Smith's interesting. Small receivers like that, the NFL doesn't generally love. I don't think he's going to go as high as most people think. And his success, who knows? Yeah. It's going to be interesting. He's probably not going to get drafted as high as most people think, in my opinion, right now. If I had to guess. This is a real preliminary evaluation of kind of feeling out what the league thinks. But the league in general doesn't there are, I shouldn't say everybody because there are exceptions, but a bunch of teams are very hesitant to draft 165-pound wide receivers really high in the draft. So he'll be really interesting. But there's free agents out the wazoo too. I mean, I don't know how many have actually hit free agency, but Chris Godwin is supposed to, his contract's up. Allen Robinson, his contract's up. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I'm missing a few other big name guys that are out there as well.
Mm-hmm. So, I saw a recent, Nathan, go ahead. You had a question.
Go. You go.
I saw you had a recent episode that you put out on your Instagram page with Saquon Barkley. And I've heard that he's going to be working out with Odell as they come back from their ACL tears. Now, how do you think about Barkley's progression so far? What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, he's still kind of in the infantile stages. I mean, the thing is, he has plenty of time. So there's no reason, and we talked about this. I talked about this with him. There's no reason to rush it at this point, right? Because he doesn't need to be back by March. He doesn't need to be back by June. Like, the season starts in September. He knows this. He's well aware of this. So there's not like a real urge for Saquon to start running and sprinting and cutting and get back by a certain date. And that's good because you don't want to rush this kind of thing. And one of the things that I was told originally when the injury happened by someone, a general manager for another team, is he said, the only thing he thinks Saquon will come back and, he's like Adrian Peterson type freak athlete and he'll be just a beast. The only thing he said you worry about with running backs when they suffer an ACL injury is there has been a history of guys then tearing the other ACL in the other knee after they come back, whether it's, a couple of years later or whatever. So just something to keep an eye on moving forward when you're talking about Saquon Barkley. But I mean, he's 23 years old. The way modern medicine is with ACL and knee surgeries and tears, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be optimistic that Saquon Barkley is going to come back and be a beast and do it pretty much this year.
So I'm just going to put this out there. So since Sean said Saquon's working out Odell, I don't know how the relationship is between the Giants front office and Odell. Do you think there's a chance that Saquon, I mean, they're lobbying him back to New York, or is there? Nah,
this is just two guys. I mean, remember they played together, so they're friendly. Saquon's really close with Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard has always been super close to Odell, so they've always been close to – and they get together every offseason. They all go to – I mean, Saquon and Shepard at some point go out to Los Angeles. That's where Odell keeps his offseason home for the most part, and they spend time there. They all work out together. The reality is it's amazing. The UCLA Stadium, like essentially if you go there during the off season, you can go there on a certain day and see like 30 NFL guys there at the same time. These guys all work out together in the off season nowadays. So the fact that they're working out together isn't really a big deal. What's interesting, and this is what my point was and he actually brought it up, Saquon, but when I was going to ask him about him anyway, and I followed up on it, was that the interesting part is that Odell and Saquon happen to be rehabbing a knee injury and are right now at about the same point. And so when you have someone going through something like that, it's good to have someone else that's going through a similar thing. So you can then talk to them. You could use them as a sounding board. And I think that's the case here, and that's the way Saquon and probably Odell, although I didn't speak to Odell, I'm assuming, that they feel that way. It's like, hey, it could help to work with somebody who's in the same predicament that I am, who's trying to come back from the same type of injury that I am. Now, every injury is a little bit different. None of them are 100% the same. But they're going through probably a lot of the same things, a lot of the same mental things that maybe struggles that you have to get over at some point. So why not, use that other person who's there who is going through the same thing? And I think that's what's going to happen here, and that has always been the case of the second Saquon saw Odell go down, that the two of them were like, okay, let's, we're in the same boat. Let's use each other and as much as possible to help each other out.
Mm-hmm. So before, so I do this.
Oh, but you mentioned the front office. He's not going back to the Giants as long as Dave Gettleman's there. There's no way I see the Giants going and getting Odell Beckham. There'll be a lot. Somebody would have to really talk Dave Gettleman into wanting to bring Odell back. Remember, he's the one who him and Pat Shurmur, had enough of him, and Odell was definitely not happy that Gettleman kept saying, I didn't sign him to trade him, and then what he'd do, traded him. And even more so is that everybody knew that they were dangling him around and trying to trade him, and Gettleman wasn't straight up with him, and that was one of Odell's biggest complaints. So the fact that he would ever go back there with Dave Gettleman as the general manager, that would shock me. Nothing's impossible in this game. Crazy things happen, but that would shock me for sure.
Yeah. So I do this fun little segment on the show. It's called the Rapid Fire segment. But before we get to that, me and my co-host Alyssa, we partnered up with the Hugh Jackson Foundation. Obviously, he's a former head coach in the NFL, trying to get back into coaching. And they're focused on this foundation where we got to help prevent human trafficking, and we're the ambassadors for them now. And I'm just grateful to be part of it, helping them out, and making sure these kids and other people make the right choices in their lives and make the community safer. And we're trying to help prevent human trafficking. So when you get a chance, I'll send you the page. But when you get a chance, check out the Hugh Jackson Foundation.
You got it. Seems like it's for a good cause for sure.
Yeah. So you ready for this rapid fire segment?
Okay, let's go.
All right. Who's your AFC and NFC championship picks for this weekend?
I'll take the Chiefs and the Bucks.
Ooh.
Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Super Bowl. Who's in?
I got Bills Packers.
Bills Packers. So we went backwards there. I don't know. You know what? I just have such trouble picking against Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs team right now. I have a ton of respect for that Bills team, and they're really good. And I wouldn't mind seeing them in the Super Bowl. But man, I can't pick against the Chiefs until they lose. I'm going to ride the Chiefs. The Patrick Mahomes is playing the last 2-3 years at a level better than anyone I've ever seen.
I'm with Nathan. I also have Bills and Packers. But my question now is, who's the rookie of the year for you this year?
The rookie of the year. Wow. Who's in the running off the top of your head? Chase Young comes into my Justin Jefferson.
Oh,
Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson would be my rookie of the year. Stud.
Yeah.
What he did as a wide receiver, it's really hard to be stud in his first year as a wide receiver. That usually is an indication you're going to be out of this world good. So Justin Jefferson, 1,400 yards, I believe. Come on.
Whew. I still can't believe the Eagles passed him up for Jalen Reagor. That was crazy.
We'll see. We don't know what Jalen Reagor is going to be because it's after 1 year. But, hey, yeah, Justin Jefferson, the early returns look really good.
Kawhi Leonard's laugh or Kevin Hart's laugh?
Which would I rather have? Or which do I find more funnier?
Yeah.
Kawhi's laugh is amazing. Kawhi's laugh. Every time I hear Kawhi's laugh, you can't. It's too funny.
Your favorite thing to do outside of covering football?
My favorite thing to do outside of covering football is probably golf nowadays. I mean, aside from my family, family is number one for me. I spend a ton of time with my family, but the older and older I get, the more and more like my sports playing becomes golf. So definitely golf.
Who's the funniest person that you work with right now?
The funniest person I work with right now, Rick DiPietro.
Yeah.
When I go on that show, he is, that guy's out of his mind. But out of his mind in a good way, in that it's funny.
I was actually going to ask you, who's one of the funniest guys that you ever talked to that's a member of the Giants?
That's a member of the Giants. Who's funny on the Giants? Eli could be funny.
Mm-hmm.
He has like a sarcastic, funny sense of humor. But who's the Prince Amukamara? I don't know if funny is the right word for him, though. He's more like happy and just fun guy to be around. So, yeah, I don't really have a funny answer. I guess I'll go with Eli because that was the first guy that came to my head. Although it could be – he walks a fine line sometimes between awkward and funny.
Eli's on Twitter now, so that's good.
Yeah.
Exactly, and you can see by his Twitter account, there's some funny and awkward at the same time. That's the way I view it.
Speaking of the 98.7 ESPN crew, me and my friends, we met all of them in person actually at a charity softball game. They do a great job with that, raising money for a good cause. And I met Rick DiPietro the first time I met him in person. Man, I can already tell he has a great attitude, a funny personality to him, and I agree with you. I think he's the most funniest person I met.
Yeah, he's a unique character for sure.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Dan Quinn coming to Dallas as a defensive coordinator?
I don't know. I wouldn't be like, that's slam dunk. It's going to be great. It's been a while since his defense have played well. He had more success as a coordinator for sure, but how much of that was him? How much did he ride the wave of a strong organization and just like a loaded defense so I don't know. I'm probably somewhere in the middle on Dan Quinn. Like it could go well or it could go really poorly.
Since I'm wearing the Jabril Peppers shirt on, I have to ask you about the Giants defense. So they definitely improved from the previous year underneath James Bettcher. Now, I want to ask you about Patrick Graham because I know there's been rumors about him getting head coaching jobs possibly. Obviously, he's back on another one-year deal. So what do you think about his defense and about that specific group moving forward?
I think that group has a lot of potential. They're close to being a really good group now. Unfortunately, I say close, but that one spot they need to fill is a really hard spot. Like they need a dominant edge rusher.
Yeah.
That's either a very costly position to fill in free agency or a tough position to land with the 11th pick in the draft. So, I mean, they're close. They need a cornerback. They could use another linebacker, but they need an edge rusher or pass rushers more than anything. So I think they're headed in the right direction. You had to really like what you've seen from Patrick Graham this year. The way they were able to scheme around some of the deficiencies was really impressive. Now it's just a matter of, okay, how can they get to be a real top 10 defense and do it against the better teams? And in order to do that, they're going to have to find that edge rusher. So They're close, though. I feel like that unit is close. The offense has ways to go still.
Mm-hmm.
Your most memorable interview you've done?
Oh, wow. Akeem Nicks once did an interview with us while brushing his teeth in the middle of a locker room, not near a sink. That was legendary. There's been a ton of Odell interviews. Some Gettleman interviews have been great. But, I mean, there's some Ben McAdoo ones that are unbelievable. I asked him once, what did you tell your team at halftime? And he just said, And he was stared and just stopped. So, man, there's been some crazy press conferences. I mean, with Josh Brown, with the whole domestic violence thing and the Giants, hanging over their head, and John Mara, the whole Eli Manning benching thing. I mean, that was nuts. So, I mean, those are some of them that come up, go back and forth. Now, the best actual interviews, I mean, guys like Justin Tuck, Justin Pugh, Antrell Roll. This is probably number one. Antrell Roll once started in the middle of a conversation. We started asking about Prince, and he said he basically went on a rant out of the middle of nowhere about how the reason Prince Amukamara had taken his game to the next level was because I don't even know. Go look it up. It was that he was finally able to have to have sex, basically. Let's just say that. So, because he was a believer in no sex before marriage, and saving yourself. So he had finally gotten married. And so the way Antrell Roll put it is, I don't even know if I could say it on here, I wasn't sure if I could print it at the time. Like, so yeah, that was the most memorable interview I've ever been a part of. Shout out to Antrell Roll for being a beast. He was always such a good guy.
Definitely gonna look that up right after this. But I know this is a hard question, but what are some of your most memorable games that you covered so far?
Games. Wow. I've been to a bunch of Super Bowls, covering Super Bowls. Those are always great, including that Seahawks Patriots don't hand it off to Marshawn Lynch one. So that comes to mind. Seeing the Odell catch in person was unbelievable. Usually, you're very quiet in the press box, but when he made that catch, it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You pop out of your chair like, wow, that was pretty ridiculous. Also, when he went for 200 yards, like 190 in the second half against the Ravens, was out of control. But unfortunately, there hasn't been many great games the last few years. So I'm going to almost eliminate any game from the last 2 or 3 years because there really hasn't been anything noteworthy. Like that 2016 season was good, though. I will say that.
So the last few things here for me. So the first one I always bring up about the late Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and obviously we're coming up on the anniversary. This Tuesday is the 1-year anniversary of their death, and obviously you have daughters too. You're a girl dad, and do you have any like Kobe memories in your lifetime, and what did they mean to you, and what did you where were you guys at when it happened?
Yeah, I my memory of Kobe is I was younger and I was working in Philadelphia covering sports, and I used to cover the Sixers a little bit, and that was one of my first in awe moments was that when I was standing there and I was interviewing Kobe, I was like, wow, this is Kobe Bryant, that's pretty cool. I don't know. It kind of hit me I don't know that it was like, oh my God, I'm in the covering guys like this. I considered it an accomplishment at the time. So that's my Kobe memory. And I remember just standing there as he was talking, and I was like almost zoned out of what he was saying, thinking I'm standing here talking to Kobe. So yeah, that's one thing that stands out. I don't remember where I was when I remember I was in my house during quarantine. I think, I don't even know when you heard the news, and I was definitely, I got it. My friends texted R.I.P. Kobe or something, and then so you turn the TV on right away, and you're like, wow, that's wild, and not what you expected when you woke up that morning.
Mm-hmm. Now, the final question for me, Giants fans like myself are definitely wondering, how close do you think that we are to not Super Bowl contention, but just playoff contention? How close do you think we are?
I think they could be playoff contention next year. I really think they should. If they make the right moves and Daniel Jones plays a little bit better, they should be a playoff contending team. Whether, we're talking about if you're an 8-8 team, you're pretty much a playoff contending team, right? So that's about that to me is what their realistic range is next year. You never know if the schedule's easy or hard or how it breaks out. If the schedule turns out really easy, sure, they can win more games. If they make a bunch of moves, they could, be a contending team. I'm not sure they're Super Bowl. I don't think they're Super Bowl contending yet, or even close. The Bills had Josh Allen make this ridiculous jump, right? Yep. But the Bills already had a better team than the Giants do around him. So let's say Daniel Jones actually makes the same jump in year 3 that Josh Allen did. That's what it would take. That's what it took for them to get to even being a Super Bowl contending team. And they had a way better team. Their defense was legitimately good last year. The Bills. Their defense was really good, and they had some really good pieces on offense, and they were able to then get Stephon Diggs. So, the Giants, even if Daniel Jones makes that jump, they're probably still a level below where the Bills are right now. So they could be a contending team next year. If he makes that big jump, they can be a Super Bowl contending team in my mind probably in 2 years. I think is realistic. Another 2 years if they make the right moves. And like I said, I've been saying Daniel Jones makes that jump, which cross your fingers, man. Who knows?
Man, I didn't realize this ran 1 hour long. But real quick, before we let you go, the last thing here, this is the question I always bring up too with the nurses, doctors, and essential workers. And I actually, me and Alyssa, we had on Demarius Smith from the NFLPA on the show, and also Brian McFadden, the 2-time Super Bowl champ. And he brought up an idea for us to ask Demarius Smith that they should honor all the nurses, doctors, essential workers at the Super Bowl instead of having. I mean, obviously the fans are important too, but I'm just saying for all the things they did for us last year now till now they want he said that they should honor the fans, the essential workers, nurses to go on the field and then honor them. What do you think of that idea for nurses, doctors, and essential?
Well, I think it came out today that they're giving 77. Like, there's only going to be like 22,000 at the game. I think I'm going off the top of my head on these numbers, and 77 of the 100 of those tickets are going to healthcare workers. So that's kind of right up the alley of what you're saying right there. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, this isn't about maximizing the money they can make off this, right? I mean, they're not going to fill the stadium this year. That's not where their money's coming from. This league still makes a lot of money. They're not making as much money for sure, and some of the teams might be making less money. But look, those TV deals they still get those checks. So yeah, making a priority the healthcare workers, or as you suggested, essential workers, which was, I guess, a little wider net. But yeah, I think it's the right thing for the league to do. And, these people deserve it. These people – think about people who go out of their way to benefit you, to make sure you are able to live the life that you want to live and protect your liberties, your safety, your health. These people deserve all the credit in the world. To put yourself first and put yourself at risk. Even like we said, healthcare workers, the fact that they're going in there and risk getting COVID and spreading it to their family every single day. I mean, the sacrifices that these people are making are tremendous, and they deserve all the honors that they can get. And so giving them tickets to the Super Bowl, to me, yeah, go ahead. I'm all for it.
Yep, for sure.
There it is. That wraps up episode 673 for the NR Hour Sports Show with the great Jordan Raanan, who covers the New York Giants from ESPN. This has been an honor. I'll be posting this on all social media formats, and thank you again for joining us. You do great things in the business. Keep it up. You and your family stay safe, and have a great weekend.
Appreciate you guys. Keep grinding.
Thank you.